I think the best way to get started here is if somebody was looking at Last General for the very first time, how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's a strategy game in real time with very large scale modern conflicts, and it puts you in the boots of a general. So you are going to be doing all the things that the general would do in a real conflict. You're going to give strategic orders to your companies, take care of logistics, take care of what to produce. For example, like there is unit production. You will take care of making sure that all the production is working and constructing new factories or whatever. Anything needed for like winning in that conflict as a general.
So very much a strategic RTS, emphasis on strategy, high level strategy more than the specificity of a single soldier and what they're doing on the battlefield.
Yes,
All
correct.
right.
Yeah, like the scale is pretty big, so most of the time you will be giving orders at the big picture. So movements of companies, like setting up what should be part of each company, and the big like movements of troops more than like saying this soldier should go to that house, stuff like that.
In terms of your background and whatnot, you know your personal favorite RTS games over the years and your experience with them, along with if you can give a bit of a rundown on your development, your actual game development experience.
Yeah, so I'm almost 40, so I started in the like end of the 90s to play RTS games. So I was playing like Age of Empires 2 and Empire Earth, StarCraft. So that's kind of like the classics that I played thousands of hours. That back then there wasn't Steam to count the hours, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are like the basic things, the basic games that I grew up playing and I love. And back then also like in 1999 or something like that is when I started programming too, and I started making like tiny games because I was like a avid gamer. So I was making games and I kept making games for like a decade, and then I switched a little bit to like websites, mobile apps. I did a bit of everything in my life. But yeah, always liked games and wanted to make a big game someday. Yeah, a few years ago, everything aligned to finally work on it.
With what you're doing in particular and my interests in games, you're kind of creating a secret sauce for me in particular as an RTS fan because I like Broken Arrow because of the strategy. You can really outplay people and you can really outthink people with what you're able to do with those units. But I also love games like Hearts of Iron, where you actually have that total strategic view. You got to worry about logistics. You have to really plan that out. Most of the game is around not fighting. It's the preparation or recovery after before or after a battle. So I was just curious, what amount of preparation goes into a normal gameplay session if you were going to get into it? Because to be clear here, let's say we have our creating our deck in Broken Arrow. For this, do you start up the gameplay session and then you just off to the races, or is there something out of game that you prepare for as well?
Yeah, so in a match, inside the match, you start probably a minute or around a minute. I will tune this over time,
Okay.
but of time before the conflict really starts. So you have a little bit of time, but not much, and you already start with like your whole cities and towns. Like it's a huge maps, and you can like start movements, but you have an initial army and an initial infrastructure and some factories already working. But over time you will like during the conflict you will still change production and change logistics to meet the needs that you have or what you want to conquer or what parts of like what cities you are attacking or whatever. um, so there will be some time for preparation but not much, and you during the conflict will still be doing changes all the time.
Interesting. Okay. That's a better timing for one of a question I was going to ask later. So in your opinion then, what does a win or loss look like? And that's in every sense that you can think of. So example being the impact of a loss of a single man compared to a tank or a plane. Then we've got these buildings and then just the gameplay in general. That was when looking at all of this footage that you've provided to me and then also the trailers and whatnot. That's what was a bit confusing to me in terms of, again, the specificity of should I actually be worried if I lose one of these tank platoons, or should I actually be worried if I lose a bunch of buildings? Then I have to actually care.
Yeah, so this works kind of like a real conflict where you're trying to mostly take cities. You're going to try to take the infrastructure and control the territory of the enemy. So that's the main game mode that I'm working on right now. There will be some other modes like insurrections and stuff like that, or assassinations. But in the main mode, it's like the classic: take all the territory, conquer the cities. Having more cities will give you more infrastructure. Then you will be able to produce more. you have a better economy, and then you kind of like snowballs into winning. But yeah, you will be fighting mostly for control of cities. So because of the amount of troops that you will have and the amount of vehicles and everything, losing some units won't be that dramatic, because you can still produce more and you have a ton more units. But over time, it will obviously hurt you if you are.
Is that a and as long as that was the end of your point there, is that a game? Is that a player decision with their economy, or does everybody have a set amount, like manpower or whatever the fuel, ammunition, things like that? How does that economy side of it work?
Yeah, you will be able to switch. Basically, everything is produced in factories. Like the resources, the raw resources are not there; are just like always available, basically.
Hmm.
And your factories will be able to produce either parts or fuel or ammo or vehicles. So you can switch your factories to create any of those. And you can also decide based on your strategy if you're going to be sending, I don't know, mid waves of thousands of infantry units to the front, or if you're going to like stay back, try to defend and use artillery. So yeah, you can switch a lot of things, and you can invest in different things depending on your strategy. You can have a very like defensive strategy and try to destroy the enemy cities or the infrastructure without like really fighting in the field. Or you can try to be like all in the ground or do a rush to the capital of the enemy. Like my idea is that it will be very free on what you can do,
Awesome.
and then everyone can choose whatever strategy they want. They probably will come up with a ton that I didn't even think about.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, and always a positive for me. Let the player decide. Give them the sandbox. I'm a big sandbox guy for all of my games. That does create issues with balance, but in my opinion, I'd rather have things be loose, especially in the position that you're in with the game and with the actual the team that you have here, being a solo developer. Just send it out there. Here's our possibilities. Here's the amount of fun that you can possibly have. And now if there's starting to be issues, then we start to rein it in. Then we start to, we start to, worry about balance after the fact. I think that's the best way to go forward with games like this. As long as you're open to going with that scope, because you mentioned Empire Earth, which is very, very sort of honed in. You've got your buildings that do this, and then you make a, let's say, swordsman. You make a horseman, and then depending on what nation you are, you have a better horseman, or you have a worse swordsman, or your bowmen are better, or whatever. In that respect, that goes on to another question that I wanted to bring up. Using Broken Arrow as an example again here, Broken Arrow has fantastic levels of detail when it comes to not only the vehicles themselves that you can deploy, but their weapons, ammunition, armor values, and their defensive capabilities like smoke and APS. Company Heroes has many systems where you can actually upgrade swaths of units from a single purchase or construction of a building. Then we have systems like tank, plane, and ship builders, and doctrines with technologies and Hearts of Iron. Based off these examples, what sort of route or level of detail are you planning to go with here for Last General?
Yeah, here obviously I'm just one developer, so I can't add that much detail. What I'm going to do is start with the most basic parts. I mean, you're in this game in the boots of a general, so the general maybe it's not like that concerned about like, oh, it's this type of ammo or that type of ammo. It's more about like the general movements of the troops and where to place things. So I will start with basic stuff like basic ammo, basic missiles. And then over time expand the capabilities, add like active protection systems and stuff like that you mentioned. But yeah, it's something that will take time. It's just the trade-off of being a solo developer is that it takes more time than with a full team.
Absolutely.
My idea is to start adding details and prioritize. That's what I have to do all the time.
100%. Yeah, completely understandable on that end. I bring it up because it is immensely powerful in games like Broken Arrow, and also alternatively because you can control your own units. You can control the planes. Well, I guess third person. I was gonna say first person, but it's not third person. But compared to what you do with Broken Arrow, it might as well be first person to be able to actually specifically go down there and see exactly where your tank is facing, see what it can see your plane, see what it can see. But on the defensive capabilities, at least, when it comes to smoke and APS, a lot of debate has popped up. So if that was something that was going to be featured in the game, where these vehicles that have the capability to have smoke or have the capability to potentially have defensive technology like APS, where does that fit into when you're controlling that unit itself? And is that something that you are also kicking down the road to worry about later, or is that something you've already thought about?
Yeah, so the units will have eventually APS and smoke. And the idea is that when you control the unit in third person, you can do anything that the unit can do on its own.
Awesome.
So it will have all the same capabilities that when the computer is controlling them, basically.
Cool. And then I'm assuming that goes for, if you're doing the planes, you got flares and, you can drop your own bomb. Are we going full War Thunder here with dropping your own bombs and your own missiles? Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, that is awesome. I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan of Men of War, but I played quite a bit of it. And the scale of it was always weird for me, especially when they try to add in like helicopters and planes. Just like, I don't know if you've ever played that game, but it keeps it very low down to the ground. So it was always awkward trying to control those units, and I would always want to gravitate towards war games or broken arrows, which you can't control them like you can with those other games. And one of the most frustrating things that could possibly happen, especially with broken arrow, is things around line of sight. So that's going to bring me to one of the other subjects that I have here. Spotting units, recon, and drones in Broken Arrow. There's a fog of war like render distance on all units, which was very similar to Wargame. They basically used Wargame Red Dragon as their proof of concept, and then also World of Conflict, which was another great RTS that I loved back in the day. Will there be artificial view and render distances or recon units? What is your state of thought and opinion on, or direction rather, on reconnaissance, line of sight, and engaging? If you can see it, you can shoot it with Last General.
So here, when units spot an enemy unit, they will basically mark it for every unit to know where it is. And also, when you give orders to the companies, that's what they will take into account for movements and stuff. They know where the enemy is. And when they stop seeing a unit, they will still show up, and it will lose information over time. So basically, if you, I don't know, spot a tank behind the building, goes behind the building, and you don't see it anymore, you will still see that marker behind the building. Like, you won't know the actual position of that tank, but for a while, you will still see that there was a tank there. So it won't immediately stop knowing about the tank like it never existed, but it will know it's there. Obviously, it won't shoot because it's like behind the building. It won't, but it will still estimate like where should it be based on the speed that it had for a while, and then it will stop. And eventually, it will disappear. It will count as like, okay, we don't know where it is anymore.
Got it.
But it has some memory of where the units were when they were spotted. And you can, in the companies and in the movements that you set for your companies, you can include recon platoons or squads, and they will go first, and they will try to figure out where the units are. So that happens automatically. Those recon units will try to figure out where the enemy is. Then you mentioned the drones, I think, from the trailer that you saw. The camera, instead of having a fog of war in this game, everything is still visible when it's far away.
Awesome.
Like a real kind of like a real conflict where like you could see a tank far away, but it's so small that you barely see them. So with the drone, you can fly over enemy territory. So you can turn your camera, the player camera, into a drone when you're flying over the enemy territory and try to spot units. And that will also go into the system that has like the spotted units for your army. So you can do recon in both ways. You can have like a ground squad of recon units that goes first to check where the enemy is or try to draw fire, or you can go with your own camera and like fly over the enemy territory, try to find where the factories are, where the companies are. Or...
Got it. This might get too technical, but before I'm going to continue on that first point there. But I hope you understand how awesome that is. The fact that if the unit exists and you have line of sight on that unit, you are going to be able to see that, because it just doesn't work with those other games right now. There's always that weird fog of war, whether it's literal or not, or whether it's visible to you that fog of war exists or not, especially if you're going to have thermal units, because it'd be real weird to just have something appear to you on thermal. Now, going back to that original piece there's actually, this can get quite technical here. So if this is something that you haven't really put a lot of effort into yet because of the state of the development, then completely understandable. But it's actually quite important based off of things that can be very aggravating in games like Broken Arrow, which are going to have similar combat. So what happens there is you have, let's say, a reconnaissance infantry unit in a building that is spotting a tank off into the distance. So that tank only exists. That tank only exists as a target because that infantry reconnaissance unit can spot it. You have a ATGM plane come in to engage that tank that is spotted. That tank now moves, or rather, the timing is important here. So that tank, the player that's controlling that tank realizes that that plane is on the way, so they try to move behind a building. They get out of the way because that reconnaissance, that infantry reconnaissance unit, no longer has line of sight. That tank disappears, even if that plane had already started aiming its ATGM. It's already about to engage that target. So, realistically speaking, that plane should have eyes on that tank. And from its line of sight, it should still be able to engage that tank. But because the reconnaissance infantry unit lost line of sight, the tank just poofs. It just disappears. So even mid aiming a 2025 technology ATGM from a super advanced fighter plane, it just disappears and you can no longer engage that. It's literally lining up the shot and then it just doesn't. That happens repeatedly. So, technically speaking, like I said, if it's not something that you've covered yet, then that's fine. Or if you haven't really thought too deep about it, then that's fine. But if you have an answer on that in particular, then that would be very useful to me in particular.
Yeah, yeah. I agree that this is pretty bad. In the game, it's solved by what I was mentioning before. Like the spotted units kind of go into a list of spotted units that the whole army is aware of. And when you stop seeing them, the system doesn't immediately delete them. So you still, for a while, will know that there was a tank there. So the plane, in this case, would still be able to target that tank. It doesn't know exactly where it is, but it knows an estimation of where it is and how long ago and where it was going. So it will have kind of the same information that in a modern conflict you would have. Like someone would say, oh, spotted a tank, go in this direction at this distance. And based on that, it can still engage. So
Awesome.
for a while, it will have the same information about the tank. It will be less precise. Maybe it will miss with the shooting. But it still has that information that there was something there.
Awesome. That very, very touchy, maybe not touchy, it's just really annoying. It's just super annoying that that's the way it works. But it does add, I will be, credit where credit's due on their end. It does add an interesting aspect to you got to be sneaky with your recon. It's so important. You can be sneaky with those sniper teams. Most of the time, it's much, much, much more valuable to have eyes on something than to, okay, there's an S300 going by me. Let's turn that AT4 on the sniper team to kill that S300. Well, now your enemy knows that you're there, so now you don't have eyes with that sniper team anymore. It's much more beneficial to just leave it stealthy, have them not know that it's there, and now you know that at least the S300 is in that area. Something like that.
Yeah, that's something that with the last general, because you don't have the fog of war, you will have to be sneaky. You have the terrain that is like not that flat, so you can kind of hide behind hills and try to use the terrain in your favor. But you will need to be sneaky because you are visible. You could be visible if the drone flies over you.
So my impressions of the gameplay I've seen so far is that this is Battlefield scope of a war game Red Dragon, but the depth that surpasses Company of Heroes and at times reaches well into like a Hearts of Iron. I know you didn't name any of those games, so you're still familiar with those games that I've been naming, and you kind of get what I'm saying? Okay. And the Hearts of Iron levels of death from logistics, pipelines, unit morale, electricity. You mentioned politics and international support on the website as well. In the work in progress videos I'm seeing here, it shows a 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer, which is awesome just from the get-go, by the way, island map. So that makes me curious about the scale and speed at which this will take place. Are we looking at a world map and decades like Hearts of Iron, or like a region map and months like Warno or Systemic War? Or is this like a predefined limited play space similar to like a Broken Arrow?
Yeah. So the whole game takes place in a fictional archipelago. So it's a bunch of islands, and each of the matches happen in a few or one of those islands. So it's like a regional thing. There are 12 fictional nations that will be fighting for this archipelago. And in each match, you will be like leading one of those, the army of one of those nations.
Okay.
The conflicts are, as you said, 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers is the maximum size of the maps. And in real lifetime, it will probably last from a few hours to several days. But in the game, it will probably be like weeks of time represented. Obviously, the time is not exactly represented 1-to-1 because you have like construction, and it can take like 6
Yeah,
to build the factory. So there will be like a day-night cycle, and there will be construction that will not match the real time. But yeah, it will represent the conflict in a big island, basically, or a group of big islands.
got it, got it. Okay. Are you familiar with the game Systemic War?
Yeah, that's the new one, right?
That's the new. Yeah, I actually just did a video with them recently, and that sort of region map is very similar to like a Hearts of Iron kind of vibe. So is that so you wouldn't go for that kind of top level like I said, like a regional kind of setup. This is a fictional, we're working with this play space, this island. And just to make sure I'm clear and I understand the gameplay involved here, if you if you start a gameplay session, are we talking about one island or do we start with a region and then that pushes down into these smaller scale islands to actually do the fighting?
Yeah, so a single match is on one island or a few islands that fit in 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers.
Got
So
it.
that's the game where you will be fighting and doing the strategy and everything. And then there is the regional map, that is that archipelago map, that is only for the campaigns. So in the campaigns, you will be like following how the nations are fighting in this archipelago and doing the missions in the 20 by 20 maps.
Got it.
And there will be a dynamic campaign that will be the same archipelago map, but you can choose any of the nations and try to conquer the whole archipelago.
Got it. That's awesome. I really that was I was trying to figure out exactly what side of that is gonna what side of the strategic gameplay is going to be the player versus the PvE side of it. So then we can bring this up right now. That archipelago high level strategic regional map, you just said it was for the campaigns. Is that PvP or is that solo or is that co-op for the larger map?
Yeah, the campaigns will be all for single player,
Got it.
and then the player versus player or co-op and everything is on each individual 20 by 20 maps.
Got it. So just to be clear, we're talking for the PvP aspect, there's not going to be like a Hearts of Iron PvP. It's going to be like a Broken Arrow basically, even though the scale and the setup will be different, of course. It'll be more of like a Broken Arrow PvP situation. Whereas, sorry, did you say it would be co-op for the campaign as well, or is it just single player?
No, single player.
Just single player. Got it. So we can do co-op on a, we'll call it Broken Arrow scale, and then you do single player only for the campaign large regional scale. Got it. Got it. Cool. And when you break it down into the gameplay aspects of like you've got your base building, you've got these logistics to worry about, and everything stays the same between the solo and the multiplayer or the PvP rather, or are there going to be differences beyond that?
Yeah, it's all the same. You have construction, you have unit production, economy. All of that is in both single player and multiplayer.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. That's going to be very similar to Systemic War, except they are not doing PvP immediately. It's just going to be PV. It's going to be single player initially, which a lot of people were disappointed in. But they said they're going to look into it, and they said they're going to push that way. So you have a leg up in going to that PvP initially, and I know a lot of the Broken Arrow fans are going to be glad to hear that bit of it because that's for some reason you just want to go fight people digitally. That's for some reason that's just what people want. I'm sure. Do you know the game Regiments? Yeah, that's another good one. But for some reason, it just people don't gravitate to it like the other games because it's solo player only. But that is absolutely what some people, if they they have a 9 to 5, they got families, they just want to game every once in a while. They do look for things like that, and that was also a big pressure point for Broken Arrow initially because there was no use like really useful AI fights solo player AI fights that you couldn't just set up a skirmish against AI. So in that respect, if somebody is looking for a solo experience past the campaign, what does that look like? Or is that even possible? If they wanted to, let's say, fight AI, if they want to do a skirmish, or if there is a 1v1 kind of game mode that you could find at least easily with you only have a short amount of time on hand.
Yeah, you can play any of the game modes in single player, like individual matches. So it's not only a part of the campaign. The campaign is basically a collection of all the game modes and different missions made in all of those modes. But you can play any game on any mode with any players, allied or not, single player. You can just choose like what map size you want, what objectives you want, and just generate the map and play a new game.
A,
And because it's all procedural generation, you can basically make a new mission and a new game whenever you want.
that a lot of people are going to be happy to hear that. Eventually, I usually gravitate towards PvP myself, but every once in a while, I might only have a couple hours. I'll pop something up. Like I'm really into the game Bannerlord right now, Mountain Blade Bannerlord, because they're working on a Lord of the Rings mod for it. That's not completely done, but I can just completely lose track of like 10 hours sometimes just with stuff like that. It's just like, oh, I just need a few more guardsmen here, or I just need a few more of this soldier over here just to fight this battle. And the next thing I know, I get wiped out. It's like I gladly will get lost in gameplay like that. And a lot of people, that's just what they go for initially. And it didn't exist for Broken Arrow initially. So I'm glad that that came to mind, and that's something that you're going for immediately. So, in that respect, is this a server hosted kind of situation like a Broken Arrow or like a Company Heroes, or sorry, server hosting or matchmaking like a Broken Arrow or Company Heroes, or is this a you're going to need to really go find people to play with and then be friends with them on Discord and really set this up and really plan it in advance kind of matchmaking situation like a Hearts of Iron or like a Civilization?
No, it will be matchmaking. So you will be able to go into a lobby and based on your skill level, match with people that are kind of in a similar skill level. And yeah, and then it will be kind of like peer-to-peer connection after that.
Peer to peer? Okay. In that respect, that obviously opens a lot of doors with the peer to peer stuff, which I don't think we need to go into too much detail, but obviously cheaters were an issue. That was a big problem with Broken Arrow initially. If you want, I don't want to. That can be a crazy discussion about all the details with that, and I have my own takes on ways that people should moderate and go into that. But just because people will want my head if I don't mention it in that respect with the peer to peer, do you already have plans for how you're going to handle any kind of cheater situation or anti-cheater things like that?
Yeah, there will be like anti-cheating in the game, and there will also be in this matchmaking a reputation system. So basically, there will be like reporting between users, and based on that, you can kind of like fall into the dark side of the game. And you can then select which users, which other players you want to match with based on that reputation. So you can try to match only with people that have been upvoted, basically. So it's kind of like a self-controlled review system in the game.
You did you catch a minute ago when I just said I have my own take on the way that people should moderate things? Because you literally just said it. You literally that's exactly what like I that's exactly how I would moderate if I had my way. That's exactly how I would moderate it because we have stuff like that with let's say like DayZ servers. It's just they're like the community runs servers. No, the anti-cheat isn't amazing. It's not going to catch everybody, but the people that get through are realized and be like, you know what? There's too many problems with you. We don't want you in this part of the community. We're sorry. You can still play the game, but there's just certain parts of the community that like, you're a bit too sketchy for us. You're going to have to play somewhere else, friend. Like that kind of thing. And that's exactly the way that that looks. Now, obviously, if people want to be, a bad actor and if people want to be, sketchy with that stuff, they can just downvote everybody. So is that something that you've given thought to?
It will be weighted based on how much you rate, how many negatives, how many positives. So someone that downvotes everyone is not probably a valid user, or not valid votes. It's just like downvoting to like troll people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it will be based on how many upvotes and downvotes you're giving to people.
Awesome. Okay. So having been on the receiving end of I would probably have to say thousands of unfinished Hearts of Iron and Civilization friendly games that I've set up with my own friend group. What kind of time are we talking about here for these the average match made game? And then there's a couple follow up questions in that respect for that.
Yeah. So the maps can vary in sizes. So the maximum, as we said, is 20 by 20 kilometers. So that's a very big conflict, and those will last probably maybe a few days. So those will have to be like saved and continued later. So you probably will want to have those with friends.
And to be clear, sorry to cut you off. And to be clear here, just this is both on me, and I know people are going to ask this. When you say days, do you actually mean literally 24, 48 hours, or do you mean like days as in an afternoon play session, all right, for which will be, 3 hours maybe, and then the next day we do another 3 hours? So what do you mean in particular?
Yeah, it will probably be like 20, 30 hours or something like that.
Got it. Damn. Okay. Okay.
I mean, it obviously depends on like the skills. The map can give you those kind of
Yeah.
times because 20 kilometers, if you're driving, it's like 20 minutes just to
Yeah.
cross the island from one side to the other one.
Oh, that's right. This is the largest scale too. So that tracks. I okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah.
So in the big maps, you feel like you're in a real conflict that is really huge. Like it's massive, and so those will take days of actual gameplay time. So in those, you will have to save and keep going another day for sure. I think for multiplayer, most people will not play in the 20 by 20. I think that's mostly going to be single player things, but I don't know. I may be surprised. But yeah, the idea is that it will be like savable so that you can continue your session later.
Okay. And then so that being the absolute maximum scale, what's like the smallest scale that you would think? What do you think would be the average?
Yeah. So the smallest maps that I play normally or I test are like 6 by 6 kilometers. I think 10 by 10 is a really good middle point. It's like 10 by 10 is 4 times less area than the biggest one. So that's something that is probably like a few hours of gameplay. So that's probably what's going to be the most reasonable multiplayer game, I think.
Does anything other than the actual play space scale with the size of map?
A bit of everything. Like cities are bigger in the biggest maps. Like I don't know, forests are bigger.
Well, I mean like resource wise. Is that going to change the amount of units you're going to call in and things like that?
Yeah. Like you have more factories, you have more infrastructure, so everything is producing more. So yeah, it's conflicts with way more units, but it kind of scales proportionally. So it feels similar. It's way more scale, way more units, but the gameplay is kind of similar.
You did mention skill level. One of the major tension points with, again, Broken Arrow is elo, and I have my own take on that, which we're not going to get into with this. But I just wanted, since you mentioned based off of your skill level matchmaking, what is that in your what's your definition of that? What does that look like for you in Last General?
Yeah, so my idea is to do an elo system,
Got it.
kind of like chess or Broken Arrow or whatever. Most competitions use that, and that you can not immediately match with someone based on the level, but you can select a range. So my idea is that you enter the game, select multiplayer, select what range of reputations you want, what range of skills you want, and based on that, you get matched to people that also select those preferences.
Got it. Got it.
You can basically skip cheaters and say, okay, I want to play with my level or a bit more, or a bit less, I don't know. And you can wait for the matchmaking.
Okay, and the thing that makes this interesting in Broken Arrow in particular is because it is only and always, until they do otherwise, but for what we can understand, there's not going to be anytime soon, be a 5 versus 5 game. So you are only 20% of the reason, realistically, why you won or lost that game, and your elo is dictated based off of whether or not you won or lost that game. So, because you mentioned there's going to be co-op online, what are the normal teams, or are most of these going to be played as 1v1s?
Yeah, my idea is to do maximum 4 players at the same time.
Okay.
That they can be any combination. So if you want 3 versus 1, you can do it. And you can select, like, if it's co-op, you can be like 3 human players against the computer or something like that too.
Okay. Is elo going to be dictated based off what you do against AI? Or is it only players?
Elo will be only between players, yeah.
Okay. Is there going to be like well, actually this is a whole separate question, so we can go into this if we want to here. Is there going to be any kind of progression involved with is there going to be a progression system where you have certain unlocks that are more than just cosmetics, and will beating AI affect that?
No, I don't think I will add any kind of progression system.
Got it.
I think it will just be the elo for multiplayer, so that to do the matchmaking, but that's all.
Okay. So beyond elo, there's no way to represent how much or how little you've played the game?
No.
Okay.
At least not right now.
Got it. Yeah. Definitely there's going to be people that are going to want something spicy to be like, they make you look cool or whatever. Which I do think, credit where credit's due. I think that Broken Arrow did a pretty good job with that. You've got your icons, you've got, you got your level, and then based off your level, that's like your rank. So you're either, a private or a general and everything in between. And it's something simple based off of whether you've played it a lot or you've played it a little. So at least that's my opinion on that end of things. And then it is good that it's not like you can't get a Leopard 2A4 if you're not level 12. Like that definitely wouldn't go that route. So good to hear that on that end.
I don't like all the grinding and all the like microtransactions and all the stuff, so it will be all available, and that's it.
You said that it was a fictional play space, but is it going to be fictional countries and units in particular? Got it. Okay, so when I see these 2A4s, I'm not thinking Germany, I'm thinking Schmermany.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. All right.
It's not going to be like parallel nations with another name like that represent some real nation. It will be real world based equipment, but in different mixes. So you may see something that looks like a Russian airplane and something that looks like a, I don't know,
US Striker or something. Yeah.
but they may be in the same team, but they may be part of the same nation because this is like a parallel story with their own lore and everything. So yeah, it's real life equipment based, but all distributed in between the nations in different ways.
I'm very glad to hear you say that. Not only from just a interest, being as interested as I am in these, the actual the units themselves and how they're used, and geopolitics involved with that stuff. You don't want it to get too messy. You don't want it to get too crazy, but at the same time, there's certain doctrine and there's certain ways that these militaries have been built up in real life, and it creates a very big balance issue if you try to stick with that. And having it mixed the way that it seems like you're going to leaves some really, really interesting gameplay decisions to be made by the player. Is there something in particular that you'd like to talk about that you're excited about, that if you team this unit with this unit?
Yeah, I think having these combinations opens a lot of doors. It's much easier, as you said, to balance things. You can have like maybe some countries don't have very good, I don't know, anti-aircraft weapons, and maybe you insert something from another nation that normally wouldn't be there, and suddenly you have a more complete nation that would fight more evenly. But also I have some like asymmetry that I want to create in the game. That's why also there are like insurrection game modes. So that's also something that it allows me to do. There are like different kinds of nations, different sizes of nations, different like power balances and alliances. So you could have a very small nation, but it's supported by big ones, or you can have some like very specialized nation that has like air support from an ally. Stuff like that, and then reputation comes into play, and like so yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do with fictional nations and fictional mixes of equipment that you wouldn't do like if you try to like mimic the real nation.
No, that's always cool. Leave it up to the player. But you do mention on the website millions of battlefields, millions of different missions. So is that I'm assuming it does, since you mentioned it earlier, that leans on the procedural content or the procedural play space aspect of that, and then also the different mission types and things like that. So with the campaign on the single player side of things, how much of that is procedural exactly, and how much do you think it's just based off of player decision? If the player wanted to do a very specific thing, could they have the same campaign twice, or is it just even if you were really good at the game and you really wanted to have the same campaign twice, you wouldn't be able to do it, or you could do it rather?
Yeah. So all the maps are procedural generated. There is no maps that I made manually. So when you play a single mission, it can be anything. You can just change a number and you get a new island. Or you can set up different options, like if you want a single island or if you want multiple islands connected by bridges. There are like many settings that you can change, including the size. For the campaign, what I'm doing is using the same procedural generation system to create each of the missions. So I can set up like, okay, I want this island, I want these objectives, and then you have a mission, and then you put like a chain of missions to make the campaign. So the campaigns will be fixed, will be always the same ones. But I could easily also add new campaigns. Or you can just decide to make your own individual missions, or even design a map. Because the first part of the procedural generation that works in two parts. The first one is basically setting up the shape of the island, the locations of the cities and initial armies and infrastructure. And the second one is generating basically all the details. So it's generating the road system, the actual roads, meshes and stuff. and placing forests, props, I don't know, bushes. So in the first part is the one I will make an editor for. So you will be able to basically draw the shape of an island, the like levels and stuff, place the cities, place the initial army positions, and just play a new game that you designed. And you can also share it in the Steam workshop. So yeah, you can create automatically generated new missions that you want to play whenever you want, and change numbers, and you get a different one. Or you can design your own and share it or play it.
Awesome. So even down to the elevation of the actual island itself or the play space, you can create your own maps. That is awesome. What does that look like if somebody wanted to create a multiplayer or like a PvP map? Is that going to just be something that can be match made into, or is there going to be a separate location for player made maps?
Yeah, the host creating the game will be able to select like one from Steam Workshop, or create create one at the moment, or just generate a random one.
Got it. And if players wanted to, and this goes right into one of the last questions I was going to have, which is mod support and player freedom to be able to manipulate anything they want in the game, or obviously any kind of limitation you might want to have to that. If players wanted to, let's say, make a 10v10, which was very popular in a previous game to Broken Arrow Wargame Red Dragon, 10v10s were quite popular. Is that something that players could do, or is it always going to be 4?
I think it will be 4. It's mostly for gameplay reasons. The idea is that you still are a general, like with a real army with a big size. So I think going for a 10v10 in 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers makes you more like a, I don't know, squad leader. It's like very small
Yeah.
scale compared to like a huge army fighting for the control of the island. So that's why I'm going for 4. I think 4 is kind of a limit of when you kind of stop being a general in this scale.
Got it.
So that's why I'm going for that. For modding, I'm planning to support like new nations, new units, customization of the units, stuff like that, changing stats, and all this like map generation and sharing. So those are the main things that I want to allow modding for that.
So you will let players, for instance, put a German flag on the hopefully not a too old of the German flag there. That was a little bit of a mess up on the 2A4s, or if they want to add specifically this is a US nation tree, and if they wanted to add a new US unit to that, they could go and do that.
Yeah, my idea is that you would be able to create new nations and set it up. As you said, allowing images is kind of controversial. So I would probably have some kind of like flag creator so that you can like create new things, but limited.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Unfortunately, with this community, I don't know if community is the right word. It's just the people that gravitate to games like these. Unfortunately, there's a very big dark side. I will say that won't be the last that you hear about that 10v10. People really liked their 10v10s, and they were really disappointed that Broken Arrow didn't have it. So I will say there's definitely a part of the community out there that even if the game does play like you're a squad leader and not a general, they would want to sign up for that. Like that's something that they would be interested in because of the amount of people involved. So I would just say keep that in mind. But obviously, completely, you do you on that end of things. You're the one with the controls there on that end.
One thing that was requested a lot was being able to be a general while other players are playing as units of your army.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah.
So that might be happening before the 10x10s.
That's awesome. So that's like, do you know Zeus, the Zeus operator in Arma 3?
No.
Look into that. That actually might be really helpful from a design perspective on your end. If you look up Arma 3 Zeus. So that's multiplayer where people are fighting around as soldiers in Arma, and then Zeus is the god. They place AI units. They can even control the AI units when they want, but then it turns it into basically a whole other game. Like when you really, if you ever see any unique like Arma 3 operations, it almost always is a whole bunch of dozens of human players on one team, and then a couple of players on the other team who are Zeusing, who are controlling the AI that they are fighting to make it even that much better. So that would be an interesting thing that definitely I would look into that on your end. So couple of just last questions here. Speaking of drones, I'm pretty sure I saw FPV in those clips. Is that an FPV, and are you going to add them?
It is an FPV. Those are from the infantry. So the one you saw with the thermal vision is basically the player camera. When you fly over enemy territory, it becomes that drone that you can turn into thermal. but the infantry can also deploy little FPVs to attack tanks or other vehicles.
Got it. Okay. And last question here. We've seen how other games can make mistakes or push unfinished product due to deadlines and funding. What are your plans leading up to and for your initial release, whatever it might be? And is there anywhere that you would like to direct players looking to support the project?
Yeah. So my idea is to keep developing this game for 10 years or more. So hopefully it won't flop. But yeah, I will do like an alpha, hopefully around January or February, and that will be in the Discord. So you can go to the Discord and search The Last General, and it's public server. So members there can be the first to test the alpha version, very incomplete version, but it's like a first test to see that everything is fine. And then will be a beta and demo on Steam a few months later. And then once it's ready and people are liking the demo and they are okay with that, and I keep doing tests internally with family and friends and the Discord. Once everyone is on board that is ready to go, I will release early access first, and then I will go for the 1.0 a few years later, probably.
Got it. Hey, you're clearly very smart. You're clearly got a great idea for a game here. I really appreciate you talking to me, and I can't wait to check out more Last General, dude. I appreciate that, Alex. Thank you for your time, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you very much.